Hello, good day, English 113 class. This is your instructor, Dr. Max Hohner, again with another video for you. I'm going to try to do one of these videos each week. There may be some weeks where we only have some minor assignments and I don't do a video, but looking at our schedule, I think it'll be almost every week. So here we are, the start of the fourth week of the fall quarter, the third full week. You just completed the Infosphere project, which was like your first bigger assignment, but still a pretty minor assignment in the grand scheme of things. And that Infosphere, what that does is it caps off basically our first unit for the course. So you've learned about critical thinking and critical reading and applied some of those skills last week, and then this week applied them even further by looking at an open letter and finding some more sources related to the topic of that open letter, and then creating an Infosphere, either in essay format or as a PowerPoint. So that's what you've just finished up. And like I said, by being an assignment that shows to me that you've learned the critical reading and critical thinking skills from our first unit, we've completed that unit. And that's how I'll evaluate those, is does your Infosphere demonstrate the critical thinking and critical reading I've hoped you've learned so far. So that's where we're at. What I want to do today with this video is show you where we're going. So with the completion of that project and the completion of our first unit, like I said, that's your first slightly bigger assignment, but still minor assignment. What we're going to do now for the start of our second unit is we're going to do your first, or begin the first of your two major assignments. So this week, starting today, Monday, kicks off the first week in a 3-week period where we'll spend 3 weeks working on your first major assignment, which is called the open letter analysis. So most of this video will be explaining the open letter analysis. And then in 3 weeks, when we've completed that, we'll spend the rest of the quarter working on your second major assignment, which is the researched argument paper. So with this first paper, it's going to be your first, full paper, so your first major assignment. But it doesn't need to be a super long paper. It's 3 to 4 pages, but we want to make sure you do a really good job on it. So that's why we're going to spend 3 weeks working on it. So this first week, Module 4 is basically just an introduction to the concepts you'll use in the open letter analysis. And those two concepts that are be relatively new to you at this point are rhetorical analysis and logical fallacies. Then next week, we'll spend that week working on the open letter itself, or the open letter analysis itself. And at the end of that week, so basically 2 weeks from now, you'll turn in your rough draft of the open letter analysis. And then in the third week of this project, Module 6, you'll basically, it's a kind of a brief module, because you'll basically just revise your open letter analysis and submit your final draft. So that'll look a couple of ways. One is you'll do peer review, where you'll be assigned by Canvas 3 partners, and you'll review their papers and give them some feedback. You'll also have 3 people review your paper, and in that time, I'll grade your rough drafts as well. Now, if you do your rough draft fully and completely, you'll get full credit, but I'll make extensive comments on them, more actually than on your final draft, so that you can take those comments and revise and expand and do your final draft. So you'll want to turn in as full and complete a rough draft as possible, so that you get really good feedback from both your peers and me, and then just what the changes you need to make, so that the final draft is actually like a shorter assignment. But what I'm really looking for there is your ability to take feedback and improve, because that's such a critical part of the writing process that you'll take from this class into your future classes when you have to do other writing assignments. The idea of getting feedback from people, even when your instructor doesn't require it, seeking that feedback out on your own, which is why we're introducing you to the Writer Center between this class and 114. So that's the lay of the land for the next 3 weeks. This week, introducing you to concepts you need for your first paper. Next week, doing the first paper. And then the third and final week of this unit, revising that first paper for the final draft of it. So I'll do subsequent videos next week and the week after that go into detail of what we're doing for those modules. So next week I'll go into a little bit of how the skills you learned today tie into that first paper. And then 2 weeks from now, I'll have a video on how to do the peer review and that whole process. Today, what this video is going to focus on is actually the paper itself, because I want you to be forward thinking. I don't want it to be, 2 weeks from now, you're doing the rough draft at the last minute, the day it's due. I want you to think conceptually as this is a 3-week project and you're starting it today, so that you're planning, you're thinking of the paper now. You can even do some pre-drafting. I would recommend you write some drafts before you submit your first full draft to Canvas. So start thinking about the paper now. If you scroll to the bottom of Module 4, you'll see the assignment instructions there. So I probably should just put them right on this module, but if you look there, you'll see them, and you can start thinking about the paper. So I'm going to go over the paper now. So if you want to, as you watch this video, open up the page in Canvas, the assignment that says Rough Draft 1, Open Letter Analysis Rough Draft. That's what I'm going to go over in the rest of this video, and I'll talk about how rhetorical analysis and logical fallacies fit into it. So if you're looking at this assignment page, like I just instructed you to do, you'll see a note at the beginning explaining just the difference between a rough draft and a final draft and how we do this project in stages and those steps. Also, since this is technically the rough draft assignment page, you'll see some info on how to do the rough draft and the peer review. But again, I'm going to cover those next week or 2 weeks from now when you're doing the drafting process. What I want to cover today is Section 2, assignment instructions, because this is how you write the actual paper, and that's what I want you to start thinking about now. Again, you can and you should work on this paper, or at least be thinking about it starting now, over the next 3 weeks. And actually our second paper we'll spend 5 weeks on, the whole rest of the quarter after we finish this one. So we really treat these as writing projects. And when you write things in future classes, or when you write other things that are important, like when you apply for a job and you write a cover letter, or you apply for a scholarship and write the letter arguing that you should receive the scholarship, just a couple examples there, but you could use anything as an example. Think of those as writing projects, where you don't just sit and write it in 40 minutes, but you work on it over time, doing multiple drafts, getting feedback between drafts. If you know the due date of the cover letter or the scholarship letter a month ahead of time, start brainstorming, start doing early drafts and getting feedback. So that's why I'm giving you these assignment instructions now. But with all of that preamble, let's get to it. And it really is a very simple assignment, so this video will only be a couple more minutes. They should all be around 10, 11 minutes approximately. So this is an open letter analysis. And in my classes, I scaffold everything, which means each assignment builds on the next one. So the infosphere, you were supposed to analyze a conversation surrounding a topic, and that topic came from the open letter. Here you're analyzing an open letter itself, but you're still going to look at those elements. So the first step is picking an open letter. You can use one of the 7 that I've posted to Canvas, but unlike the infosphere, for this assignment, you can choose any open letter you want. So if you want to go online and find, whatever it is that interests you, if you want to find an open letter one of Taylor Swift's fans wrote to her, you can do that. If you like football or World of Warcraft or whatever it is, find an open letter that's about a topic that will energize you and get you excited to read about. Or you can do one from Canvas too that's already there, whatever works. And if you have any questions or concerns about that, like I say on this assignment prompt, just email me, Canvas message me, or set up a Zoom appointment. We'll talk about it, but I would be pretty surprised if whatever you choose didn't work for the assignment. So pick an open letter, and then what I want you to do in one sentence is Analyze the strengths and weaknesses of that open letter's argument. So this is what we call rhetorical analysis, and you'll be learning about rhetorical analysis this week. So rhetorical situation is anytime someone is trying to communicate something through either text or film, or it could be auditory if it's a podcast, but when someone has created a text and is trying to communicate a message, that's a rhetorical situation. So there's an author who created the text, there's the text itself, there's an audience who receives or listens to or reads or watches the text, and then there's the message the author's trying to communicate. Those four elements of the rhetorical situation. So all you really have to do for this assignment, it's very simple, is figure out what is the author's goal or purpose. Why did that person write this open letter? What was that person trying to accomplish in writing this open letter? Then answer that question. Did the author achieve their goal? And the way you decide if the author achieved their goal is by thinking about the audience. Who is the audience? Remember, that's why we do open letters, is it could be addressed to a specific person, but it's written in a way anyone can read it. So if, someone has someone in mind, like for instance in the John Leguizamo letter, he's clearly addressing that to the filmmakers in Hollywood who make these decisions about who's in what movies, but he wants everyone to read that. So does that author, like in that case, does John Leguizamo achieve his goal? And then why or why not? So the why or why not can be the rest of your paper. And there's different rhetorical appeals. There's ethos, which appeals to credibility. Does this person seem like a credible authority on the subject? There's pathos, which is emotion. How does the writer appeal to the audience's sense of emotion? Did they try to make you happy or sad or scared or laugh as you read it to persuade you? Do they use logical reasoning? That's the third one, logos. Does it, the argument of it, if you follow the steps of logic, does it just at a basic level make sense? And then kairos is timing. Was it, when it was written, was that the right time to make that argument? Because you'll be surprised once you start to look at rhetoric how many arguments actually the timing of it hinges. If you've ever asked your parents, for instance, to borrow money or buy you a car when you turn 16, you could probably think of times when was maybe a better time or not to ask them that question, right? And you were an author with a purpose in a rhetorical situation when you did that. So that's all you're doing. Looking at the letter, what is its argument? What are the strengths and weaknesses of that argument? Does the author achieve their goal? Why or why not? What is the audience's response? How does the author use rhetoric to try to achieve that goal? So that's it. And the last thing I'll say is, when we talked about the infosphere and you did the infosphere this week, you considered the conversation, how the sources you found were talking to each other. You can do that here because I do ask you to include a couple of sources. So, what is the argument they're making? Like, what is the general topic? Like with the Leguizamo letter, it was representation in Hollywood. So as you look at a couple sources to help you flesh out your analysis, this doesn't need to be a main point of the paper, but just kind of think about, does this adequately address the topic? Is it maybe missing things? Is there somewhere that another writer, such as yourself maybe, could fill in the gap there? Because what that'll do by just thinking about that or addressing it a little bit in your paper will give you a launching point for the argumentative paper that will start in 3 weeks. So, like I said, each assignment builds on another. You're going to be looking at an open letter again, using a lot of the skills you learned for the infosphere here, and this will set you up to find a really good topic for the argumentative paper. Now, you don't need to write on the same topic, but if you do, the open letter analysis here can help you start to see where you might find your own niche when you come up with your own thesis for that paper. So that's this assignment in a broad overview. Next week, I'll talk a little bit more about just how to write it. And again, you'll learn about the rhetorical analysis I mentioned in this week's readings and this week's discussion board post. And you'll learn about logical fallacies, which are mistakes in logic, which will help you, again, analyze the letter's strengths and weaknesses. The last thing I'll say is I would Probably recommend writing on a new open letter, a different one than you did for the infosphere. You can technically write on the same one, but this needs to be all original work. So you can definitely do completely original work, but it might be kind of hard. But if you have the research you found for that and you want to keep rolling, as long as you start from scratch, that's fine too. In your discussion board post assignment that's due at the end of this week, basically asks you to prep for this assignment. You can use elements of your discussion board post in your paper. So it's just helping you get started on it, basically. So that's everything. Again, as always, email me, Canvas message me, or do that to set up a Zoom appointment if you want to talk in person. Happy to help you with anything. I look forward to continuing to read your work. It's been a great class so far.